Welcome to the Love on the Go podcast, brought to you by Carolina's Matchmaker. I'm Laurie, and for over 17 years, I've been helping singles find the relationship of their dreams all over the Carolinas. Along the journey, I've met so many amazing professionals and experts from various fields, and I'm excited to introduce them to you. What's my goal? I want to help you look at love and relationships in a new way and to grow in your understanding of how love works. Let's learn together how people have overcome personal obstacles and have found love, first and foremost with themselves. The ultimate goal is realizing that you are worthy and deserving of love. Let's get started. Will, I'm so excited to have you on the podcast. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So Will is a VP of Merchant Engagement at a financial institution here in Charlotte, North Carolina. He is single. So if you're listening to this, make sure you watch this on YouTube because Will is adorable. Will, introduce yourself. How old are you? Have you been married?
Yeah, so I'm 30 years old. I've never been married. I am sort of definitely a financial oriented person by background.
Okay.
I got my start in consulting early on, and then kind of moved back to go to school and study analytics at Georgia Tech, and then found myself working at a bank, doing some different business development activities and managing relationships.
Okay, wonderful. And we're going to try to manage your relationship today. I'm just kidding. So Will's a client of mine, and he was very kind to agree to be on this podcast. We've done matchmaking with Will. He recently got into some online dating that I want to talk. That's what I want to talk all about today, because Will's like figured out the algorithms and some things that a lot of people don't know about. And I even learned a healthy dose when I was talking to Will last time we met up at Caribou recently. So Will is, like you said, he's 30, he's fit, he's handsome. He is ready for a real relationship, and he wants to get married. He wants to have kids one day, the whole shebang. So if anyone is interested in meeting Will, please DM me. And we'll get into a little bit about what you're looking for in a minute, but let's talk first about sort of the whole idea of mastering online dating apps and what you have noticed recently. Let's talk about pictures, Will. What have you learned recently? I know you've done this. He is very analytical. He's done like a ton of research on this.
Yeah.
So tell us what you've learned.
Absolutely. I guess I want to say up top, my goal in kind of being here and sharing some of this information is I'm talking to myself probably about, a year and a half, 2 years ago, pre-meeting Laurie. And I'm thinking back on the things that I wish I had known, the things that I have learned over the past couple of years. And I'm really talking to myself here as I share some of these tips. And I also want to bring a bit of encouragement to people who might not know where to go, or as they're thinking about how they present themselves, they may not have ideas. And so definitely want to just bring that concept that, anybody can do this and you can always improve,
Yes. And I also will say that I have introduced Will to some wonderful people, and he's had relationships with some women as well. It just hasn't worked out for one reason or another. But I've only ever gotten really positive feedback about you. Just great guy. And, you don't find the one until you find the one, period.
That's right.
And, Will is still a young man. So, I think that online dating is definitely a really good adjunct to matchmaking. And, there are so many people online dating, but there's a lot of things that people are doing wrong with online dating. So, Will, I appreciate your sharing what you have learned. So let's get into it.
Pictures.
Pictures.
This is, if you break down online dating, it sounds so deceptively simple. There's essentially like two areas that you have to focus on. That's it, right? It's like pictures and prompts.
Yep.
And then you get into it and you get into pulling down those, few Instagram photos that you feel like are, that you want to share or that really highlight you. And you go, I don't have enough content for this. How's it so hard to find 6 photos? And so for me, that's been a journey, a bit of a process to realize that I needed to go out and find some of those photos that really represented myself. And
Mm-hmm.
I'll be the first to admit, I'm not the guy who's always, kind of like capturing the moment. And so
Mm-hmm.
for me, I think it made sense to hire a professional and
Yeah.
really spend the time investing in the situations, the locales, all the things that I think made me look like me online. And
Yes.
that's really the first thing I'd recommend, is spending the time and perhaps the resources to ensure that what others see is how you see yourself, whether that be outside, on the town, like at night, kind of walking the
Mm-hmm.
street,
Mm-hmm.
however it is that you want to come across, that's what you want to highlight. Essentially, you want to tell a story with these photos
Mm-hmm.
to pull other, viewers in and make them, want to know more effectively.
Good. And I like the way you need to be thoughtful. It needs to be intuitive, and then you need to be really kind of being intentional about what you're putting out there to make it look like you, and also the best form of you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'd say I'll keep most of this advice positive. The things I'd say that I've learned to avoid
Yes.
are those instances where you've got big groups of folks in your photos. You get
Mm-hmm.
that big group of friends. Try and find things that isolate only you. Like, don't make somebody look to have to search you out, in a sense, in every photo.
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to get a sense of how much time on average is spent looking at a profile, and I have to believe it's probably somewhere between 30 and 50 seconds, based on my own kind of research and my own experience really in looking at profiles. And so it's not a lot of time to make that first impression. And
So, Will, I'm going to jump in here and just tell
yeah,
you, I think it's a lot less than
I think
that.
it's less.
Oh
Yeah.
God, yeah. I'm going to say 3 seconds,
Oh gosh.
5 seconds, probably. Like when I'm looking for my clients online dating at the men, I make a very, very fast decision.
So I'm slow.
You're slow. Well, it shows that you're probably spending a lot more time on the profile. If you don't like the first picture, you're looking at the second. A lot of times people just look at the first and then they're done. And they can tell a lot by the first picture.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so ultimately that's the best way to do that is only feature yourself effectively, or an area where you're around other people, but it's kind of a photo that's focused on you. The second one I noticed, while it's really great to highlight yourself in nature or in your kind of like in your zone, right? Outside.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that you want to kind of feature yourself in a big, wide expanse of area where, I've got to like really zoom in to find you.
Yeah.
And, you find a lot of scenic kind of photos that
Mm-hmm.
they might be epic, Grand Canyon or something like that. But
Right.
if I can't see you, then it doesn't really add a lot of value to your profile.
Some people would say, especially with women, men will say to me, I can see her figure in that photo if we're looking at heterosexual relationships, and the full figure. So that's the benefit of being in a wide expanse, I suppose.
Yeah, I could see that. And I think,
Mm-hmm.
to your point, full body photos are important just so
Mm-hmm.
that people can get a sense of like what you fully look like, in a sense. Um, and also just maybe how you dress. It's some of it's kind of like a vibe, I guess, that you give off when you're able to see the entire person, right?
Mm-hmm. That's true. Okay. So, what else did you learn?
Related to pictures. So the other thing is, I think, facial expressions and ultimately like your smile. This is it's such an important way that you come across in a photo. And
Mm-hmm.
it actually took me a little while to like understand that sometimes the way you smile on a camera is not exactly the way that you would smile when it's a natural reaction to something.
Okay.
And so it's interesting that there are, ways that you can kind of create that feeling of natural expression, um, intentionally. And, some of that is like learning to lift your eyes in a way that it pulls it pulls attention to, your face, and ultimately makes you look like you're looking at somebody kind of through the camera. And there's all these approaches that you can learn that kind of help create a very natural and attractive expression, and definitely more natural than probably the ones that I was giving previous to taking some of my photos.
So when you were looking at the camera for your professional photo shoot, were you like trying to be very, very intentional, looking at the photographer, thinking about something and trying to be expressive through your eyes?
Yeah, in a sense, I think having something in your mind can certainly create that, ability to, open your smile up essentially, and make it more authentic. Some of the other things I realized is that I think I lift my mouth a little more, on one side than the other. And I just do that naturally when I'm in front of a camera.
Right.
Whereas if I'm, really laughing about something that somebody said, I might just open that smile up completely,
Yeah.
and it just may feel a little more like welcoming or authentic. And so there's all sorts of ways and that you can kind of learn to improve on that. Ultimately, it just comes down to practice. It's like, when I think about the session that I had with my photographer, I think he took 1,500 photos. It's volume is important here, and it's okay if they're not all great. You're going to find some that work for you.
So, what, what were you thinking about, Will, when you were looking at the camera? Did you have a funny memory? We want the
I
inside
think
scoop about you.
some of it is, also the benefit of having a photographer is they can make you comfortable. And, so for them, they're kind of just being silly around me and, saying things that, felt funny and
Okay.
ultimately kind of prompted that response.
Okay.
But yeah, you kind of start to conjure up like, a stupid memory or something that, without being specific, it just kind of makes you smile.
Okay.
Like,
Okay, good. Good. So vibing with your photographer is really important.
very.
Okay, good. And is there a way, do you think, I mean, I know that I have various photographers that I use in different cities. Is there a way, in your opinion, for people to be able to really decipher in advance if you're going to vibe with a photographer?
So I spent about an hour with my photographer kind of on Zoom, just like we're doing, talking about his approach and getting an understanding of when he walks into a shoot, what he's looking for. And
Okay.
what that meant for me was he showed up before our shoot. We looked at wardrobe. We talked about, what he thought were the most important aspects of body language and positioning. He wanted to understand what types of shots that I wanted to take, like, shots of me in the city or shots of me doing things that I was interested in, like cooking, for example. And ultimately that really helped me to frame this kind of experience in my mind, made me a lot more comfortable about doing it before it even happened.
Okay, that's great. So it's important to be thoughtful before your photo shoot, to really think all these things through, whether, and, even if you're just meeting, because sometimes people can't afford a professional photo shoot, period.
Yeah.
You can do this with a friend at the park. It's not going to be as good as a professional, but with the new iPhones and whatnot, you can really get a good picture. So you need to think in advance, what am I wearing that's going to show off, my physique in the best possible way. So be really intentional around that and have a couple changes of clothing. Think in advance some prompts maybe that make you giggle, something, a romantic idea in your mind, whatever, and try to pull those out. I think it's hard for some people to relate to a camera. They're a little nervous or a little shy. They get anxious. People are like, I hate taking my picture. They don't do selfies. They don't like, not that I recommend selfies for online dating ever, but they're not practicing. So if you're one of those people that gets nervous having a photo taken, I would recommend, kind of like I don't know, I used to do this like back in junior high school, smiling in the mirror. What do you look like?
Absolutely.
Get comfortable with smiling with different angles of your face. A lot of people have a better angle. Like I know my right side photographs. Is it my right side? Yeah. My right side photographs better than my left, which is odd. But I mean, everybody kind of has a good side. And I know this is very technical and it also sounds very superficial as we're talking about it. But you have to understand that the first impression you make is a superficial one, period, online dating and in general in life. So you need to make sure to put your best face forward.
Totally agree.
So you got these wonderful photos taken and you help select them. And I do this with my clients as well. And you then what did you do?
So once all the photos are done, I
Mm-hmm.
think the process for me was to really try and cull down that group into, let's say, 2 dozen that
Mm-hmm.
ultimately you feel defines you
Mm-hmm.
and tells the story that you want to tell to the people you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And then, for me, it starts to become more of a question about how I lay those out. And ultimately, what I really had to do was just start somewhere. And, for me, it was kind of building a profile from scratch again,
Mm-hmm.
and start to kind of test what works. Eventually, the great news with, an app like Hinge is you're getting feedback on specific things that are in your profile. So somebody's
Mm-hmm.
telling you, I really like that picture.
Yeah.
And you can use that to better kind of optimize your profile. And then, if things are not working, maybe you're not getting attention on a certain photograph, make a switch and see if
Mm-hmm.
something changes ultimately.
Okay, good. So prompts that are common on Hinge, on Bumble are things like, two truths and a lie.
Yeah.
Was it hard for you to think of these things, or did it come pretty naturally?
No, it was very unnatural. So, you should
Okay.
see this Word doc that I have of just like kind of these just random thoughts that I'd have when I'm
Yep.
at a grocery store on a Sunday and I think,
Mm-hmm.
oh, well, carrying your groceries in is really annoying. It's like that's, but also rewarding. It's like, maybe that's kind of, maybe there's like a funny aspect that I could kind of work on to kind of get a premise,
That's right.
from this. And so you kind of think about the experiences you have in day-to-day life,
Mm-hmm.
and there's opportunities to kind of draw from those as inspiration. But ultimately, for me, my focus was to like create a solid balance between communicating your needs and sort of what you're looking for,
Mm-hmm.
and then find a way to be, fun or quirky to show your personality.
Mm-hmm.
And through those prompts, I think you really can strike that balance of being serious and pretty fun at the same time.
Right. And you thought this through. I think a lot of people, men especially, I hate to say it, they'll get online, they'll load up a couple pictures they might have in their camera roll. Some of them are super old, some of them they just like, they don't know what they're doing. And then they're like, oh, I've got to answer questions. I'll get to that later.
Yeah.
So I'm literally online dating for my female clients sometimes. And I was doing this last week. I was so frustrated because literally, Will, there was nothing written. There was not even like where they went to college. I mean, you got to give something
Yeah.
for a woman to be interested in you. Give me a break. I was so frustrated. And it's ridiculous. And when they are great pictures, but then nothing written, it makes me think they're a scammer. So, you don't really know. And the quirky, like the funnier you are, maybe a little quirky, even the more interesting and dynamic it is. A woman is going to be attracted to that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say if you're listening to this and you're struggling with prompts, there is kind of an interesting construct that one very generous Redditor created, and
Okay.
wanted to get to this because I think it's so valuable as a
Okay.
framework. So think about your prompts. If you have 3 prompts to give, think about dedicating one to telling something about yourself, so me, and then use the second one to either ask a question or kind of indicate the type of person you're interested in. So then you, and then
Mhm.
use the third one to create space for what us could look like effectively. So together we could do these things, or like together we could talk about this topic. There's all
Mhm.
kinds of ways to create an invitation or a call
Nice.
to action that helps to say, this is what we could do together, and it creates a space for that person to respond, or, sort of start the conversation effectively.
I love that. One of the prompts was green flags. Okay, me was the two truths and a lie. You, green flags. I'm hoping you, how did you fill that one in?
Yeah. So I'll say real quick on me. I feel like I struggled a lot with two truths and a lie originally. And
Okay.
I kind of thought, who's going to really do anything with that? Or who's going to say something? Turns out that's the one that I ended up getting the most attention on.
Okay.
And it's become something that I really feel like actually helps to frame content. It gives you actually three places to put something that's interesting by default. And so I definitely big shout out to that prompt. And I think that really everyone should give that one a try.
Uh-huh.
In terms of the you, so like starting on green flags, I love
Mhm.
that it's a positive oriented
Yeah.
prompt. And so from there, you can start by saying things that are relatively serious, and you can indicate that you want somebody who's intellectually curious. You're looking for
Mhm.
someone who is kind to others,
Mhm.
somebody who's empathetic. And then you can kind of get a little more abstract at the end. You could say, and I hope you love dumb videos, or, kind of leave it in a place where it's playful and
Mhm.
kind of fun for the other person to think like, oh, okay, it's not that serious, but you're still communicating something that's very important to you, clearly. And then, I'm hoping you dot dot dot, really, I think in a similar way to green flags, it creates that space for someone to respond and say, well, I'm those things,
Mm.
and it's for me a great opportunity to just display the types of things, whether that be activities or characteristics, that you find attractive.
Right. And you also don't want to discount people. You don't want people to be like, oh, well, I don't play tennis, or you don't want to put
Yeah,
somebody like pigeonhole yourself too much where somebody thinks I can't relate to this. So they sort of need to be general also. That
definitely
would appeal to a lot of people, I guess is my point.
agree.
Okay, good. And then the us prompt.
Yeah, the us prompt, for me, it's something I'm still working on, I'd
Mhm.
say, but ultimately, together we could dot dot dot, it creates an opportunity to underline again, some of those activities that you want to be doing, or
Right.
the, experiences you want to have, whether that be, like having a deep conversation that like ends in laughter, or like having some of
Mhm.
these like very specific ideas, going for a nice walk after a dinner.
Mhm. Mhm.
There's kind of a vibe you can create with that prompt that I think is interesting.
Mhm.
um, and then I also love the conversation starter kind of icebreaker opportunities too. So on Hinge, there's two really that I like. There's one that says, I'll pick the topic if you start the conversation, and then
Uh-huh.
let's debate this topic. Uh,
Yeah.
I think the one I've got currently is the let's debate this topic. And
Okay.
I, uh, I, I put in, do you think that pickleball is a sport or just a hobby? And
Nice.
there's,
Oh boy. What'd you
it's a
get?
hotly debated one.
Yeah. What what's the majority answer?
It depends. There's a lot of tennis players are pretty
Mhm.
salty about losing their court.
There was a big debate in my neighborhood about it too.
Yeah,
It's loud.
it is.
Oh, that's funny. You're salty. So Bumble versus Hinge.
Yeah,
Which one do you like better and why?
it's a great question. I'm very torn on this
Okay.
because I feel like I've actually gotten more actual dates on Bumble, despite using it on the sort of like free only version.
Okay.
But Hinge is actually the platform I prefer because it allows me to I can say more effectively, and it's also very personalized in terms of me finding people I like.
Okay.
And I'll say also one interesting thing about the two that makes them kind of like mutually exclusive, and one reason I prefer to use both
Mm-hmm.
is they're very different approaches. Bumble has kind of a Tinder style swipe platform,
Mm-hmm.
but underneath that, one of the things that's interesting is that it gives you this open about me space that really has no direction. And I really appreciate that.
Okay.
One thing I've found, there's a lot of ways you can fill that space,
Mm-hmm.
but I've found it interesting to try and create a prompt myself that balances again that seriousness and then kind of the humor side of things. And so,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like again, I think the one I've got live right now is effectively like, I'm looking for someone to share my life with, but will also, laugh at dumb videos or send me, gifts, And so it's kind of like trying to find that place where I can sneak in something that I think is really important, but
Mm-hmm.
not be too serious or taken too seriously ultimately. So a
Okay.
great space for that.
Um, did you and I know that with Hinge they have polls, and it's a little more, there's some interactivity going on.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
One of the
Mm-hmm.
really cool things that I've seen both platforms do
Mm-hmm.
is encourage and create the opportunity for people to respond more.
Mm-hmm.
And so polls on Hinge, to me, creates a really great place for you to go further into that invitation and say, here's what our first date could look like, or,
Mm-hmm.
here's three things that we could talk about, or how do you feel about one of these things? Lots
Mm-hmm.
of different ways you can slice that. Hinge also does, things like video prompts or voice prompts. I've not taken
Mm-hmm.
that route, but I find it interesting that you have those options if that helps to present you in a
I
certain way.
think that's a great idea because people definitely fall in love with voices. Sometimes they don't love a voice and it's a complete turnoff. It's like they show up and they're like, oh, okay, I don't like his or her voice. We're out. But Will, you've got a wonderful deep voice. So I think you should try the voice prompt.
Maybe I will.
I think so. And let us know how it goes.
Okay.
So then on Bumble, there's reactions that you can use and compliments that you can give.
Yeah. So I think compliments right now, you can give one a day,
Hmm.
and it's again just a great thing to be able to actually specifically reference something that someone says. And in the case of Bumble, you're kind of bypassing the requirement of them to like actually swipe on you blindly,
Hmm.
and they're getting a chance to see like, oh, this person asked you this question, do you want to respond?
Yeah.
So that's a new functionality that I think really is a credit to the Bumble experience.
Yeah. And I know they're always changing.
Yeah,
Um, and then always ask a question at the end of your prompts to get people to be responsive.
definitely. Yeah, I think even if you've kind of crafted a profile that's not related or doesn't create, that natural question, you can always
Hmm.
add that question yourself. And so
Hmm.
I always encourage people to do that.
Okay, wonderful. All right, let's talk about optimizing the way that you use the apps. So you recommend that people use multiple apps. I say the same. I'm going to recommend Match, Bumble, and Hinge. Those are my three favorites. What do you think?
Yeah, I have not used Match,
Hmm.
frankly, so I'm
Hmm.
not too familiar there,
Yep.
but at least two, right?
Okay.
To
Yep.
me, it's just a great opportunity to kind of add to your kind of virtual domain.
And are you finding that you're seeing the same women on Hinge and on Bumble?
Yeah, most of
Okay.
the time there is that overlap,
Okay.
but there,
But not always.
right. And I
Okay.
think I've definitely had swipes or likes on the same person on 2 different apps and then
Mhm.
ultimately matched on one.
Okay.
So just
Okay.
because you see 2 people doesn't mean they see necessarily that response in real
Mhm.
time.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, you recommend up or consider recommending upgrading to premium. I definitely recommend premium Bumble for
Yeah,
sure.
absolutely. This was something I fought against, and I don't really know why. I was
Okay.
very reticent to kind of just commit to that. And once
Mhm.
I did, or kind of got myself around to it, I
Mhm.
really appreciated the benefits of it. For me, limited time, a lot of other things going on. I really appreciate the ability to go ahead and filter out the people that I know, likely I wouldn't be compatible with. And so ultimately saving some time and getting to those people that you find
Mhm.
interesting or attractive or share similar interests, do that up front and save
Mhm.
yourself some of the hassle of having to go through, hundreds of people likely to kind of
Yeah.
start finding those people.
So for Bumble, because I can help my clients with Bumble, but not with Hinge, because that's
Mm.
just on your phone and location based. But and I don't download for my clients the apps. I have them do it, and then I can jump in. So when we recently got one of my clients onto Bumble, a female, and the benefit of the premium is the men can like her and get into her beehive versus her having to do all the work up front. So the benefit is she already knows who's attracted to her. And then she gets to choose, are these guys that I would be attracted to, instead of her having to reach out to all these men who may or may not be feeling the same way she is. So it just saves a lot of time, frankly.
Yeah.
And, and that's the whole thing. And she had like something like 100, because she had great pictures that we did with her. She had like 150 plus. It was a lot of people that I was going through for her, like I said earlier. So this definitely put her in the driver's seat, in my opinion. Yeah, and yeah, gave her more strength around all of it. So better visibility. Let's talk about visibility. You told me, Will, that before you had the professional photographs done, you were seeing one subset of women. And then after you had them done, it was a whole different grouping that were
Yeah.
popping up.
Night and day. And, this is something that I've not been able to substantiate like officially. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
giving you my firsthand experience, but
Yeah.
having the ability to kind of A B test some of the changes from my old profile with effectively just normal photos
Yep.
to professionally done photos.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there are countless number of people that I saw who liked me and who I liked them, despite being on these apps for, a little while now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that kind of just all of a sudden appeared to me. And, it's very interesting that you can think that you might be seeing everyone in the area,
Mm-hmm.
but in reality, we don't know necessarily who is being suppressed from your view based on the way the algorithm works. And so, all the more reason to ensure that you're putting your best foot forward, because everything on that profile, from your facial visibility to the background to the prompts, the wording of the prompts, it all goes into something that's effectively scoring you to other people.
This is fascinating to me. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of people do not know this. You are not seeing everybody. You think you are, but you're not. So if you're on there, especially, I mean, men and women, if you're on there and you're swiping and you're like, yeah, there's nobody good on here, it's like you need to be looking at your profile, at your pictures, in order to be able to get better candidates into your pool, period. That's what's going on
Definitely.
here. I'm so fascinated. I don't know if that's the same with Match, but it sounds like for sure it is with the apps, Bumble and Hinge. So that's incredible. You guys listen to that. That's really important. Okay. So what do you think is kind of the like what to avoid?
To avoid from a profile perspective.
Yeah, and like what to avoid. You mentioned the word doom swiping to me. What is that?
Yeah. So, if you think about social media, it's been a while since I've been on, but,
Mhm.
there was always this concept of like doom scrolling effectively,
Mhm.
where, you get on Facebook and you see bad news and you keep going down your feed and it kind of gets to be more bad news. And it's just, so
Right,
eventually you leave feeling almost worse than when you kind of started.
right.
And I think the same concept really applies here in that, there is such thing as spending too much time doing this. You may think
Mhm.
if I just keep going, I'll get to the next opportunity.
Mhm.
And I'll just keep driving it, swiping and liking.
Mhm.
And I think that can kind of drag you down. It certainly did for me. And
Mhm.
I think my recommendation and the sort of discipline I'm applying to myself is to set some limits, create some boundaries that
Mhm.
ultimately help you to escape that feeling of like, why isn't this happening for me? Or,
Mm.
I think we all have the sort of desire to see that change immediately,
Mhm.
and there may just need to be some patience involved in this process. And so recommend you, whether it's, you know, getting up in the morning and doing it and sort of setting a limit for yourself. I'll look at 10 people,
Okay.
or before you go to bed, just
Mhm.
create that boundary for yourself that keeps you, ultimately healthy and positive about the experience.
Yeah, I've heard sometimes it's a little bit of an addictive situation for people. It's like the continual search, but never getting to the destination kind of feeling. You don't need to go there. So if you're in a bad mood, do not get online dating. You need to do a little meditation. I always tell people, do a little meditation, ground yourself, sit down, relax, and then just maybe, set an intention that I'm going to enjoy myself for the next 30 minutes, responding to people's messaging and liking new prospects. And then, the next morning, 12 hours later, go back in to make more responses. You don't have to be on there all day long. You don't need it to you know, dig in or bleed into your life all day. So you're in control of this situation. It doesn't control you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think control is an interesting concept when you think about this process,
Mm.
because we've talked about up to this point all the things that you can control.
Mhm.
But in reality, after that point, if you've done everything you can, some of it isn't in your control. And
Mhm.
the truth is that, you could have a great profile and it may not get seen immediately by the people who you want to see it. And
Mhm.
so I think realize that this takes time. And ultimately, if you're doing everything that you can, the rest will come, the rest will follow ultimately. And it's certainly something I had to learn for myself as I was doing this and going through this process of changing and learning.
Mhm.
And the results were iterative. It didn't all come at once effectively.
Mm. So you need to keep your head up. You had a couple of ideas on how to do that, how to keep yourself positive.
Yeah. For me, I think learning and the work that we did together certainly helped me with this. But,
Mhm.
I think that you have to experience failure to grow.
Mm.
And the great news is you're going to be faced with that when you do go through this process, whether it's, through matchmaking or online dating. There's going to be
Mhm.
some component of seeing something in yourself that you want to change, or not getting the result that you hope to get. And
Mhm.
really, I hope to encourage, you to keep going. Whoever's listening to this and needs to hear that today.
Mm. Mm.
This aspect of failure is so important to learning about yourself, to creating and motivating change, and ultimately realizing the success that you hope to have.
Wonderful. Wow. Well, this has been amazing. And thank you so much for just sharing your journey. I know it's going to help people. Really interesting dynamic stuff. Will, do you have a charity that you give to?
Yeah, I do. So out of Charlotte, there is a faith-based organization called Samaritan's Purse.
Mm-hmm.
So their focus is very broad, but in a few words, essentially, they focus on international crisis response, disaster relief to areas that need it. They have a global medical team that is very cool. And then one of my favorites is they manage Operation Christmas Child, which is a focus on bringing the gift of Christmas and ultimately necessities to war-torn or poverty-stricken areas in need. So really providing a lot of joy to children who desperately need it.
So sweet. And this is a single spotlight also. So if anyone is interested in meeting Will, please reach out to me. Will, do you want to say, like, in just a couple of sentences, what you're looking for in someone?
I'm really drawn to people who are curious and are looking to explore the world and understand it and enjoy all that it has to offer. And so, with that, I think, being professionally driven is certainly a draw, but also a desire to be relationally focused. And, so family orientation, a strong support group with, as friends or communities that you're focused on. So, um, you know, you know, uh, I'm not sure what else to say. I think, I really enjoy people who are outgoing and enjoy sort of exploring life.
I love it. Wonderful. I have so enjoyed getting to know you, Will. All right. Well, we will close this out for now. And thank you again so much. It was delightful.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Love on the Go. I hope you join us on our next episode. You can make sure to know when it is by following us wherever you listen to podcasts. Also, if you enjoyed it, it'd be great if you left us a review. I'd appreciate it. In the meantime, to learn more about me and how my team can help you, visit carolinasmatchmaker.com. Until next time.